Houston Cougars, a furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Holman Podcast, coming to you in the month of July, though technically, as the two of us sit here in front of our microphones, it is the very end of June, and I have good news for you all, Cougar sports fans, as we are here, I would say somewhere around the middle of the college sports offseason. This is your last month until next June or July, where there won't be a Cougar sport happening of some kind. We're not going to get to it this episode, but I will note we did have, obviously we've been on the football schedule for a good minute here. Volleyball and soccer released their schedules. So I'm already seeing it, Bobby. I'm seeing Cougar sports on the horizon, even if we have about 6 or 7 case of football, about 8 weeks until we start seeing that in our lives again. So that's the good news. The bad news is we still have about a month and a half of heat and no Cougar sports. But as we always do here, we have Cougar sports stuff to talk about tonight. Some offseason stuff, including the most ever Cougar basketball players taking an NBA draft. We're going to talk plenty about that as well. An offseason topic that we've known about a couple months here that we're going to do. We've been very excited to get to, and we're very excited for you to hear what Bobby and I have there. Just you and me this week, buddy, the regular co-hosts. How are we doing?
Good, man. We are, it is finally hitting 100 degrees here in Dallas. It's warm. So you're trying to find your inside activities but World Cup's keeping us entertained and just going through everything. Got a busy couple of weeks coming up personally with work. So just counting down the days till that kicks off and excited to be talking Cougar sports with you.
Yeah, we're getting a very brief reprieve. It was actually when I played my outdoor sport of choice last night, never got above 89 degrees, it's good. I'm not complaining about that because it was like 20 degrees hotter a week or two ago, but it's almost like, damn, I've baked in a certain amount of cardio I'm going to get from this. I'm assuming I'm just going to be punishing myself. And I was like, actually, I don't feel bad. Maybe I didn't do enough exercise here. So I will be in your state here at the end of this week, experiencing the wonders of the Heat Dome, seeing my folks for the 4th of July. So excited about that, less excited about the aforementioned Heat Dome there. We'll get to our show here, but we'll mention a little housekeeping. If you like the work that we do doing year-round, even when there's not Cougar sports happening, talking all things Houston Cougars, you like the work that we do and you do not do so already, the place you can do to support us is patreon.com/shpodcast. Little as $5 a month, you can support the work that Bobby and myself do on a weekly basis, even off-season weekly basis, talking all things Cougs. That's patreon.com/shpodcast. Got a lead tonight talking about the NBA draft and all the Cougar men's basketball players who were selected in it. This was going on last week while we recorded our podcast, and we knew with a pretty high likelihood of a Cougar alum getting picked on the second night of the draft on Wednesday in the second round after our usual recording spot. We decided to talk about the topic in full on this week's podcast. Your big takeaways: Cougs had a total of 3 men's basketball players taken in the 2 rounds of last week's draft. Kingston Flemings with the 8th overall pick by the Atlanta Hawks in the first round. Chris Nack also in the first round with the 27th overall pick, picked by the Boston Celtics, and Emmanuel Sharp picked in the second round with the 45th overall pick by the Sacramento Kings. This draft group is the most ever Cougar basketball players selected in an NBA draft. Mentioning this gives me an excuse to also mention one of my favorite odd Cougar factoids, that Olympic legend and current Cougar track and field head coach Carl Lewis was actually selected in the 10th round of the 1984 draft alongside actual basketball players Akeem Olajuwon and Michael Young. Even though in no uncertain terms, which we'll get to, that I think this should have been a group of 4 Cougar alums getting drafted, with Miles Uzan being a part of that group. A vindication of not just U of H as a program that produces professionals, along with great college teams, obviously, but a vindication of the three young men specifically who we think will all have long professional careers. They're getting started with this draft. Pretty crazy stat here, Bobby, also that I noticed in doing my research for this. With these three Cougars being drafted, the program has now had 8 players drafted since 2017, the year Damian Dotson got picked in the second round by the Knicks. Prior to these 9 seasons, Bobby, or 9 years-ish, from 1986 to 2016, there were a total of 8 Cougar players drafted in those 30 years. So obviously it's very much picked up the way this program has sent guys to the pros. Flemings and Snack also represented the 4th and 5th Cougar men's basketball alums under Kelvin Sampson to go in the first round of the draft, which, keep in mind, Bobby, prior to Quentin Grimes getting picked in the first round in 2021, you hadn't had a first round pick since Cadillac Anderson in 1987. But prior to both of us entering this mortal coil, even now as not young men, I tried to focus my thoughts from here on as best you can with some NBA roster moves still being made on each of the 3 draftees fit on their team. We'll talk Miles Uzan and his fit on the Celtics as well, talking about the teams a little bit as well. But I had to find room for some of those crazy factoids. Talk to you long enough, Bobby. Give me your thoughts on this latest group of Cougar men's basketball alums that just got drafted.
Yeah, I think as a whole, hard not to be excited for those guys and see where they've landed, things like that. I think Kingston to Atlanta is pretty solid. Of course, I would have loved to see him in a Mavs uniform when he got picked 8th. A little disappointed there, but also was kind of expecting him maybe not to fall to 9. If he did, it would have been really exciting.
Seems like everyone had him at 8. With that many people pick him in that spot, you kind of,
And there were so many point guards in that like 5 to 10 range. It was just filled with point guards that you kind of had a jumbled of which point guard do you pick. All of them graded pretty similarly to one another. And then the Mavs didn't even end up choosing a guard at that point anyways, which indicates maybe Kingston wasn't going to be the choice for the Mavs. But I think the real winner here is Chris Sinak. Heading to the Celtics. When it was happening, you're kind of like, boy, Chris has kind of fallen, and I wonder what's going on here. And maybe another year in college would have benefited him, but also he went to a team that does a very good job of developing talent. That's one of the things that the Celtics are really known for, is drafting well and then developing that talent. And Chris, being 19 years old, he's not needed right away. I expect to see him as a first round pick getting some minutes in the NBA. In the NBA level, not necessarily in the G League, but very much has the vibes of could be a guy who makes an impact in a couple of years, and ending up in Boston is just such a really, really good fit for him.
Yeah, really excited about that. I will say over the decade plus of doing this pod, my NBA fandom has kind of waxed and waned. Right now, I would say it's close to a higher point. So I tried for everyone listening who isn't intimately familiar with the majority of NBA rosters, do a quick look at the team and situation of each of the 3 drafted Cougars. Do it in the order of where the 3 were drafted, leading off Kingston and the Hawks. Hawks are coming off an interesting season. They went out in the first round of the playoffs, which, I mean, on its face, isn't going to be a season that anyone is wildly excited about. But, I mean, you look back on it, they were the only team to give the New York Knicks anything close to a legitimate series. They were the only team to win multiple games against the Knicks, even at one point held a 2-1 series lead before the Knicks rattled off 3 straight and then barely lost the remainder of the NBA postseason. CJ McCollum this past season was the Hawks' really go-to guy, both as a scorer and point guard, part of a midseason trade where they kind of ended the Trae Young era there. I think the lack of the defense, the lack of the health, I think he wanted out of there is probably best fit for both parties. And after the season, McCollum signed a 1-year extension to stay with the Hawks. Fair to say with him on the wrong side of 30 that Flemings is the future here, and I expect McCollum will start the coming season with Flemings kind of being the bench group point guard. And in the broadest terms, that was kind of what I expected Flemings' freshman season to look like here before he actually enrolled, kind of being the understudy to Miles Uzan. Obviously ended up blowing my incorrect expectations out of the water there. Maybe I'm wrong twice, which I would love for Flemings. I still expect him to be on the court a fair amount as a rookie. It's an interesting roster. During the past season, as I mentioned, they traded away Trae Young, for McCollum, mainly, but not exclusively. I think that Corey Kispert in that deal as well. They were one of the best teams in the final months of the season. At one point, they won 11 games in a row. They're a little guard heavy, which I think got exposed when the Knicks knocked them out of the playoffs. So they did try to address that with their other first round pick, big man Zuby Ejiofor from St. John's. They also got a really interesting second rounder, Henri Vesar out of UNC, who many people thought would be late first round, early second round kind of guy. Other than seeing some grumbling online from Hawks fans that their head coach Quinn Snyder is a little reluctant to play younger guys, this really seems like an ideal situation for Flemings. He's joining a playoff roster that still had the draft capital to add multiple younger guys, Flemings, Ejiofor, and Vesar, who are all, I think, intriguing in their own right, and that he has a long-term path to be the point guard of this team, while there still is a veteran group around him, which I don't think puts too much pressure on Flemings to be responsible for the short-term results on a team that I'm sure the expectation is, with McCollum back, with them going to the playoffs this past season, for them to at least equal that regular season production as well. Everything you said about Chris Snack and the Celtics, I co-sign there. I think he fell a little more than we expected, though. I mean, I think him being a later first-round pick generally wasn't a huge surprise. But yeah, I think we're both really stoked about his landing spot with the Boston Celtics. Obviously, there are rookie monetary implications of going later in the first round, which I'm not going to undersell those here, but sometimes, especially for a guy like Sanak, who I think we all generally knew was going to be a multi-year developmental guy into the league, going into a situation like the one he's going to in Boston can be ideal. This is a team that's gone to the playoffs each of the past 5 seasons, 2 of those being the NBA Finals, which they won 2 seasons ago, or I guess 2 years ago. Maybe that's 3 seasons ago now. Winning culture with the Celtics, no doubt about it, which is one of the reasons I'm really bullish in the situation. Their basketball operations are run by Brad Stevens, their head coach from 2013 to 21. Before that, I'm sure many people will remember him as the wunderkind head coach of Butler at the college level when that team almost won the 2010 March Madness over Duke. I mean, just look at their roster. They're so good at identifying developing guys. Most of their key players are homegrown players. I mean, their 2 stars, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, were both Celtics draft picks, but also the role players, guys like Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchett, Baylor Shireman, Luka Garza, and Hugo Gonzalez were Celtics draft picks. Neemias Queta was drafted by the Kings, but came to the Celtics as a completely unproven pro and has established himself there. And despite not really picking high in the draft since they drafted Tatum and Brown, they annually do a really good job finding good professional basketball players. I think in particular, the development of guys like Garza, Shireman, and Queta is why I'm really encouraged that Snack's about to join this franchise. So maybe in the perfect world, we would have liked to see Snack go 5 or 6 picks ish higher in the first round of the draft, but you almost can't draw up a better situation for him than the one he landed in here in Boston. And for your lone second round pick, Emmanuel Sharp, kind of a different situation than what Flemings and Snack are going into with their new teams. But I still believe the Kings can be an ideal spot for Sharp coming into his first year of professional basketball. In the last several years, the Kings have had playoff caliber teams, which is better than they performed most of our adult lives. At one point, I don't know if you remember this, they had a 16-year playoff drought, which is the longest drought in all of Big Four American sports. But since they kind of had that brief renaissance, they traded away their former star guard, De'Aaron Fox. Their other star, Domantas Sabonis, missed a good chunk of last season injured, a season in which the Kings lost 60 games for the first time since the 08-09 season. But they still have a decent core of guys like Sabonis and Keegan Murray, who also missed a decent chunk of the most recent season injured. DeMar DeRozan, a former NBA champion, is still there, along with Zach LaVine. This should be a better team in the coming season if Sabonis and Murray are healthy. I have seen Murray mentioned in some places as a potential trade piece, but I can see Sharp working his way into the Kings rotation here as a 3-and-D guy off the bench. In that draft group, they also brought in Darius Acuff, maybe the best scoring guard John Calipari's ever had out of Arkansas with their first round pick. It's an interesting roster. Probably not one that's going to lose 60 games again in the coming season, but I still think there's a path here for Sharp to get into the rotation, or failing that, maybe alternate between being a bench guy for the Kings and maybe getting more serious run in his first professional season playing for their G League affiliate in Stockton. We'll also mention Miles Usain, who ended up not being drafted, but was signed fairly quickly, also by the Boston Celtics, being a teammate with Kristen Ack now on an Exhibit 10, contract. An Exhibit 10 contract, if you don't know, is a 1-year non-guaranteed contract, but one that has a possibility of becoming a 2-way contract if the player makes the NBA team's opening 15-man roster. Essentially, Miles has a clearer path to being part of the Celtics' longer-term plans than, say, your players who are summer league invites or, I mean, not an easy path. It's never an easy path from undrafted player to being a regular NBA rotation guy or a starter. But one of the guys I just mentioned earlier, Sam Hauser, is a former undrafted guy who's had a nice NBA career with the Celtics. So not an impossible path either. Still think Milos was worthy of getting picked by someone in the draft, though I would be biased in my assessment, I'll admit, as a Cougar fan.
Yeah, I especially after last year, he was borderline first rounder. Was some of the talk that, yeah, if he comes back, he can solidify himself in the first round. And now suddenly he doesn't become, he's not drafted at all. That just seems a little odd. Something medical, maybe. I find it hard to believe that he wasn't picked at all. But like you said, he's got that 10-day or that special contract that kind of gives him a little bit more of an in with the NBA teams and making their actual NBA roster.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get out and see all these guys at Summer League here. I know I also might have some dental surgery in there. So I'm hoping to get out there on the 9th. Yeah. Don't know if I'll get there on the 9th because I think that's all right when that's happening. But I will definitely get out there and see these Cougar men's basketball alums in action here in my new hometown. Love me some Summer League basketball. And thankfully I've been able to combine my love of Summer League basketball with seeing a lot of the Cougar rookies getting their first run out with their new professional teams.
Yeah, as a admittedly college guy, I love the summer league too, just to kind of see those guys one more time in a different uniform, in a different kind of space with different rules. It's kind of fun before they hit the full NBA. The NBA, it almost feels like a college all-star game when you're kind of watching them on teams together and things like that. So just kind of fun. A little different,
always loaded with, oh, that guy, I remember that guy, like
yeah.
Here and there. And like, yeah, if you're doing a summer trip to Vegas in July, first off, thoughts and prayers, because it's almost
T's and P's, baby. T's and
P's. Murderously hot here, even though I know, like, if you're going to Vegas in July, chances are your plans are being in various air-conditioned buildings, probably doing some gambling, probably doing some fine dining, all that stuff, but would very much encourage it. UNLV is like a 5-6 minute, I guess maybe 7 or 8 if you're staying up like north on the strip, Uber ride over to Thomas and Mack. Summer League is always a blast if you like basketball. We'll get to one non-Cougar, but at least Cougar and Big 12 adjacent topic here. Don't want to spend too much time on this, but since it's the summer and this topic we've discussed in multiple episodes previously, we're going to do a quick update here in the saga of the now former Texas Tech quarterback Brendan Sorsby in the 2 previous episodes where we discussed this topic. I believe the first one was immediately after his extensive gambling revelations became public, and then a few weeks ago we followed up on that when seemingly Sorsby had gotten a legal avenue to play the coming football season via a temporary injunction from a Texas judge. And what happened from that point forward was fairly public outrage from other Big 12 member schools. And maybe the most important piece of why Brendan Sorsby is now the former Texas Tech presumed starting quarterback is that Texas Attorney General and candidate for Senate Ken Paxton issued a written legal action threatening the Big 12 Conference if they tried to use their authority to punish Sorsby, which in doing so gave the Big 12, who immediately retained the prestigious law firm Sidley Austin, the legal standing to petition a federal judge to allow it to enforce its conference bylaws with regards to Brendan Sorsby. And before anyone thinks I'm getting too partisan political with this one and being very unfair to one Mr. Paxton, the very Republican attorneys general, I know Dustin would get me for that one if I didn't use the proper term here, for Oklahoma, Kansas, and Utah immediately after this forcefully said they would work with the Big 12 in this one. So don't really think this is a partisan political thing. Ultimately, the Big 12's legal maneuvering seemed to appropriately scare Texas Tech, and shortly after that petition to the federal judge, the parties of Sorsby and Texas Tech announced they were parting ways. I guess for me, it's an all's well ends well situation, and good to see that the larger college sports world responded with the appropriate amount of horror and disdain that a school tried their damnedest. And it's important we don't forget that part. Texas Tech tried its damnedest to get this guy on the field playing with a pretty minimal suspension this coming season. I mean, because let's say we're living in the reality where Sorsby does play with that 2-game suspension that Tech was trying to give him here. He throws an ill-advised pass or something in a game, as can often happen with quarterbacks who haven't.
Especially ones like Brendan Sorsby.
I mean, that was the one not football knock. I mean, he didn't throw that many picks. I think the legit football complaint was he didn't throw enough completions against teams with a pulse.
That had good defenses.
Yeah, good defenses this recent season. But I mean, let's say that happens. Immediately, you have real speculation. Is this guy doing this because he placed an underbet on his team? Something he factually did when he's part of the
NBA? Whether it's fair or not to think that, right? You can have that discussion. Is that fair to do?
It's fair when the guy's bet on his team before to have fewer points.
And the question's going to come up. Like, whether you think it's fair to believe that everything that he does is based on a bet, it's going to come up. So, like, whether you think that's fair or not. Sorry.
No. I agree. And I think that would have put us in this really ugly place where you have fundamental questions about integrity of the game, which is why he never should have played. So I guess we can be grateful about that much.
Yeah, and like my whole thing is not that he bet, right? It's that he bet on his own team. And you would think Texas Tech fans would get that after a while, right? Like, they're like, oh, well, so-and-so gambled. And it's like, but not on his own team. Like, that's the point. You're missing that little caveat. Like, it's a pretty big caveat to just glaze over. Like, oh, well, Oklahoma State announces their jersey patch with the Native American group, and they have a casino, and how come no one's mad at Oklahoma State for talking about gambling? And it's like, buddy, it's not the gambling. It's the gambling on his own team. And then I had another stupid Texas Tech fan, which, by the way, if you wanted to talk about a fan base that's as dumb as
bottomless well of those,
just on their social media, there was a guy who was like, yeah, but do you actually believe he threw a game? And it's like, even if he didn't, and you believe he didn't, because the games that he bet on, he didn't play in, or what, it doesn't matter, right? And they were like, well, if you shouldn't be punished if you don't, like, it's more moral. And like, he went on this whole tangent, and I was like, if you break the law, you break the law. Like, it doesn't matter if somebody's affected or not. If you're doing 100 miles an hour on the freeway, whether it's 5 p.m. or it's 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, yes, there's less people on the freeway at 3 in the morning, so you're less likely to hurt somebody. But if you get pulled over by a cop, guess what? You're getting a ticket for going 100, whether it's at 5 or it's at 3. Like, and then you have Tech fans that are like, oh, well, how come Cincinnati's not getting punished for this? Spoiler alert, Cincinnati probably should if they knowingly played him when he bet on games. Like, I'm okay with that if you go back and retroactively. So, no, that's not a thing. And then you have Tech fans that are like, oh, well, the crazy thing is we never actually played him and people were mad about it. No, you know what? You're right. You didn't play him and people were mad. And to be honest, people weren't necessarily mad at Texas Tech. Right? Like, sure. But I'm getting this mad if it's Wisconsin. I'm probably not speaking about it as much because it's Wisconsin and that doesn't, like, affect my team. But, like,
if we're doing an Illinois podcast, we are, though, you know?
Right, exactly. Like, if I'm an Illinois or, you know, fan, like you said, I'm pissed off and I'm talking about it on the podcast. It's the fact that, and then Tech, like, oh, so them trying to take the high road, like, we're helping the kid. We gave him all that. Buddy, you mean to tell me that if this doesn't continue to go down, you're not playing him game 1? You paid him $5 million to not play game 1. You're telling me that? Hell no. You're absolutely playing him. And everyone's like, well, he hired a lawyer and Texas Tech wasn't on the lawsuit. Sure, man. Sure. Yeah. The lawyer that helped him get that waiver is one of the most litigious lawyers against the NCAA. I'm sure that he was just doing it out of the kindness of his heart, and Sorsby just happened to find him. I'm sure Texas Tech had nothing to do with paying for that lawyer, whether you believe it actually paid for it, or if that NIL deal that he got, that he reportedly got $1 million from, helped pay for it. Sure does seem kind of odd that that lawyer was just like, yeah, I'm sure the Sorsbys got it like that. I'm sure the Sorsbys got it like that.
And yes, like there could be larger conversations about how prevalent gambling is, especially among the 18 to 30-year-old cohort of young men in America. Is that net good? Is that net negative? I'm leaning more towards net negative the older I get. But schools have alcohol, like schools or conferences have alcohol sponsors. That doesn't mean they have Bud Light as a sponsor. That doesn't mean you can pound 12 Bud Lights and get behind the wheels as a student athlete. And if you get caught by that, there's no consequences to it. Just because sports gambling exists doesn't mean, oh, well, that's your get out of jail. And then I think what made me maddest about this, in addition to the just dumb as rocks Texas Tech fans, who most of whom weren't even willing to condemn this in the softest terms, which to me, it's insane. Like, I don't think U of H would do this. I think if nothing else, Dr. Couture and Eddie Nunez would know the optics of this were very bad from the jump, and I don't think we would have had this situation. But I wouldn't have had a problem if this was a U of H athlete condemning this on here. I've had that problem, and I don't think there's not a section of our fan base that wouldn't blindly defend it like they blindly defend anything that helps us win games. But I think the Tech fan base did a very good job just showing their asses collectively about this. And everything Sorsby did was so transparently ass covering. This wasn't like he was guilty about it and finally was just like, I can't live with this anymore. I can't live with this addiction, and confessed. He got caught. He got caught by gaming regulators in Ohio from some of his past bets, like the going to rehab for gambling addiction, ass covering, like all of this ass covering, and doing things subsequently, like he got denied, but not denied admission, but the NFL basically said we're not holding a supplemental draft, and essentially said, you don't seem too remorseful about this. This mostly just seems like you trying to cover your bases, which, I mean, could have seen that a mile away. Like, you don't need to actually really dive into this super in depth to see just everything about it. Like, there's no remorse for the action. I hope at some point for his sake, as a human, there's some remorse, there's some reflection on, man, like I really fucked up here and what have you. I would, in honor of Brendan Sorsby, Bobby, I think I would take the under on him throwing one NFL pass in his life. We'll also say, I'm surprised you didn't mention this. One of the things that made me laugh the most about this right after the Sorsby announcement was Tech's now presumed starting quarterback, Will Hammond, tweeting about how proud he is to represent the Texas Tech program. And buddy, they were willing to ruin their reputation to not have you start this season.
And pay a guy $5 million.
Yeah, I'm sure even now as the presumed 2026 starter was probably the backup before all of Sorsby's revelations broke, that he's making good NIL money. But I don't know about you. I'd feel some kind of way if my school was willing to go to the lengths that Tech clearly was willing to go to play somebody who wasn't me as a starting quarterback, even after all of the gambling revelations came out.
Yeah, man. I think that was one of the funnier things. I think I sent it to you and I said, yeah.
You did. That's why I surprised you to mention it.
Yeah, Will, they're really excited to have you. I'm sure you're pumped knowing that they had spent $5 million on anyone but you to play quarterback for them.
A quick palate cleanser before our main topic here. I want to give a shout out to 7 Cougar student athletes who today were announced earning the highest honor a Big 12 student athlete can earn academically, the Dr. Gerald Lage Award, given to athletes who have at least 90 credit hours and a 3.8 cumulative GPA. Your full list of winners is Aiden Connor and Alyssa Gonzalez from volleyball, Evelyn and Traken from swimming and diving, Ella Morgan from soccer, Ty Lawton, Aubrey Tupper from track and field, and Valeria Croatina from tennis. I mean, it's super impressive award regardless of any of these athletes' specific athletic accomplishments, but some standout athletes from that group. Watt was U of H's top athlete in the hammer throw, picked up points at both Big 12 indoor and outdoor championships. And Traken was all conference in 3 different events. She was first team all Big 12 in the 100 breaststroke and second team in the 200 IM and 200 breaststroke. Gonzalez started most of Cougar volleyball's matches, was second on the team in kills, and Croatina, who we've talked about a fair amount the past couple weeks, coming back to Cougar tennis, which we're very excited about. I had a 14-1 singles record for the tennis program this past spring. I mean, it's incredibly hard to play a Division I sport and be a full-time student. To do it at the level these athletes have done it both on and off their field of competition is really impressive. And I wanted to make sure I shouted out every one of them here.
Yeah, super impressive to get that done. Really kind of cool to just see that announced, and happy for them. Like you said, really hard to get a college education and play Division I. Both those things are hard, independent of one another, let alone doing them together. So pretty impressive stuff there.
All right, Bobby, let's get to our main topic. It was your idea to do this, so I will let you introduce this for the listeners at home.
All right. So Sam and I, just to kind of set this up, Sam and I listen to a podcast that we actually support financially. You know, we joke with you guys, like, if you like what we do, throw some money at us. We do this with these folks, and that is Split Zone Duo. They are a college football podcast. It's something Sam and I really like. One, it helps keep us up to date on what's going on in other parts. It's easy for us to kind of get caught up in Big 12 and in U of H stuff with all the sports that happen in the fall. So it's just a nice thing to kind of listen to. On Sunday, they do their hurry up where they talk about all the games that took place that weekend, and just do a little tidbit about them. Shout out Sam for
good college football pod. That's not just like I think my problem with a lot of college football pods, it's talking about the same 10 to 15 teams. And not that Split Zone doesn't talk about the best 10 to 15, but like you actually get something beyond the 10 to 15. You get the college football bigger picture. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. So one of their off-season pods, they obviously have a bigger off-season than we do since we cover everything. But one of their off-season podcasts was take 25 points and you spread them throughout college football history, and you can kind of change what college football history look like. And one of theirs was Ohio State versus Miami in that national championship game, and they dedicated a couple of points to Miami there, and how that changed the U and what we thought of, and all these different things. So I thought that was a really cool idea. I loved that episode. I probably went back and listened to it a second time. I just really enjoyed hearing them talk about it. You get that nice little history of college football. But when I heard it, I said, Sam, I think I have an idea for an off-season podcast. So what we did is we decided to make it a little bit harder since it is for one school. But Sam and I each have 20 points that we are able to give to various games throughout the history of University of Houston that we think may change history for University of Houston athletics, or would just make you feel a little bit better about some of the things that went down. So Sam and I each have our own list. I don't know what's on Sam's list. He doesn't know what's on mine. So to get us started, Sam, we're both going to pick some games, but I think both of us lose 6 points off the jump. I think we both can agree that 6 points are kind of done. So which one are we going to talk about first? I'll give you my first one, and that's going to be 1983, the men's basketball national championship game. That one feels like probably the most important game in University of Houston history. And the reason why I say that is, how do I think this changes U of H's outlook in history? I think if you win this game, I'm not saying it's guaranteed that you get moved into the Big 12, but you win this national championship game here, you add on the Heisman in 89 from Andre Ware, and what that team looked like, and even that 1990 season with Klingler on the cover, it gets really hard to take a team that has a national title out of your conference and kick them out in one of the two major sports. Now, college basketball wasn't what it is now back then, and football was really important. But I do wonder, does Baylor get that political kick to beat Houston for that kind of final spot in the Big 12? Do you maybe jump ahead of Tech if you have that national championship game in 1983? We can talk about the moment, all of that we want to, but that feels very important in, does U of H go to the Big 12? If U of H goes to the Big 12, I think everything else that happens from 1995 and on, this university looks different. The gains that we've seen in the university as a whole under Dr. Couture, I think those may have been expedited if you have a much more solid athletic program, one that's in the Big 12, things like that. I also would say, without this 1983 game, do you have Jimmy V week? Do you have that speech? Do you have all of that? Does Jimmy V become Jimmy V if he doesn't have the national championship tip in where he's running around? So 1983 really just feels like a change for University of Houston and maybe college basketball and what we think of as college basketball kind of going forward there. So for me, number one is going to be 1983. As much as it pains me, I do think maybe you don't get into the Big 12, but it certainly feels like you have a leg up over a team like Baylor, a team like Texas Tech, if you have that national championship in there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the most impactful. I would fully agree with what you said there. That's definitely a sliding doors moment if you do find a way to win that. And I think it does become harder to deny U of H that spot when the Southwest Conference dissolves to the Big 12 if it's an athletic department that doesn't just have, you know, Andre Ware Heisman and kind of the buzzy outlaw football program era, but also not just an era where, oh yeah, U of H was good there for a few years and a serious national title contender, but a national champion. Like that is just one of those things. Like there until Baylor won one, there wasn't a Texas team that won the basketball national title on the men's side between Texas Western in the 1960s and Baylor in 2021. Like you change here, and I obviously have also had this game among my 20-point allocation here. I mean, there were things working against U of H, like you were relative to Texas Tech and Baylor, who had been in the Southwest Conference much longer. You more of a Johnny come lately, more of the outsider city school than those two. So maybe that ends up happening. I think also just the post Phi Slamma Jamma era for U of H, maybe you do a bit better. Maybe it goes a bit smooth. Maybe it doesn't. Like, I think you acknowledged it. Like there still is a chance that fundamentally about 12, 11 years later, you're still in a similar spot because some of the things that were working against U of H, both internally and externally, but I think it increases the odds a lot. And like you said, also like one of, and I hate that this is what it isn't as painful because this was before we were born, and it is genuinely harder to conceptualize something, even as you and I have seen that clip many times. Like if it happened well before you were a sports fan, or in our case, we're even on this planet, it's harder for it to feel personal. Like I can recognize in the abstract how painful that moment was, but it's not as painful. But you're removing one of the more iconic March Madness moments there. If U of H, give him 3 more points, or Lorenzo Charles doesn't find his teammate. I think it was Wittenberg to Charles, I believe, for the layup there. If that doesn't happen, then I think it's a whole different looking college basketball landscape. And agree. I have the 2 obvious picks here: the 83 basketball national title game, the 2025 national title game. I do agree. It is the one that we have less personal stakes in or personal feeling in because it happened before we were born. But for larger impact, I don't think you can argue that one. I think you change that result there. I think you change college sports more dramatically than any of the other picks that you and I will make tonight.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I did, of course, also have 3 points to the Cougars in the 2025 national title game against Florida. And I mean, obviously, there's no scenario where that loss wouldn't have been incredibly painful. I mean, just the nature of making a title game and not being the team that wins it sets you up for a fair amount of heartbreak. But to be at one point in the second half leading by as much as 11, which also, as a Cougars in the 83 title game, also had a big lead at one point in that one. over NC State to be leading by as much as 11, to have the ball in the closing seconds where a 2 would have tied and a 3 would have won it, and then to not get a shot off in those closing seconds. I mean, special kind of painful there. A pain that I would argue few fans of all of the very good programs that haven't won a title yet have themselves lived.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always said between each other, objectively, how U of H lost in the 83 final was painful. But again, say it for not the first time here, that moment was years before both of us were born. So it's harder to feel as personally gutted by it when it's something that I didn't experience in real time. As a fan, unfortunately, those of us who are 50 or younger now have our NC State buzzer beater moment, and it's this game, which correctly assumed that we would both have front and center along with the 83 game among our various points on occasions. Still consider myself incredibly fortunate, blessed, or whatever adjective you want to use to describe it, that I've gotten to live through this past decade or so of Cougar men's basketball under Kelvin Sampson, watching him maybe be the best U of H coach in any sport, certainly the best in our lifetimes, maybe best ever period, considering where the program was immediately prior to Sampson taking over. I mean, there are many people who are diehard fans of college basketball programs who haven't gotten to experience even a fraction of what you and me and all of Houston Cougar fandom have gotten to experience. But man, what I wouldn't have given for that Monday night last April to have gone a little differently.
Yeah, I think maybe 2025 for our older fans doesn't hurt as much if you have 83, right?
Oh God, man, if I was 60 and I was like a young man during the 83 one, and now like entering my later years of the 2025 one, oh man.
Yeah, that's tough, right? But I think 2025 hurts us because that's the closest we got to become. We have our own version of 83. I think a team with 2 national championships that feels better, that looks a little bit better. You really get to pat yourself on the back more than any other team in the state, and you solidify yourself really as a basketball school, as the basketball powerhouse in the state.
No doubt. All right, what's your next one, Bobby?
All right, my next one is I am allocating 2 points here, and I'm giving them to the 2000s baseball team in their super versus San Jose State University.
I also have this one.
And the reason why you put that in there is for no other reason than you get to go to Omaha, right? This is a time in which U of H is struggling to get fans in anything. You're not good at really any sport. You're good at baseball. You kind of tell yourself you're going to become a baseball school here, and you get pretty excited for it. And then you're the number 8 seed. You're hosting a regional. You're hosting a super. And then you lose in 3 games. In 3 games. This is game 1. If you win this game, you win game 2. You're headed to Omaha with a lot of momentum on your side, and you are and who knows what happens in Omaha. But I think you get to Omaha here, and you have the stepping stone to go to the next level with this. And honestly, you could, if you win this game and you advance to Omaha, you become what Rice became in the early 2000s. Same recruiting ground, same everything. Rice may have a little bit more money, but you have a good coach, just like they have a good coach. You go to Omaha and you build upon that, and you just come up short against a team that was pretty good. San Jose State was not like a team that barely got in. Like, they had 40 wins on the year. They had over 40 wins on the year, but you'd really like to see that team get as high as, in the ranking as number 12 in the season. But you lose that super, and you just kind of see a little bit of momentum kind of start to taper off with this here. So I have that one. You said you had it too. What were some of your thoughts on why you chose it?
I did it slightly differently. I also allocated 2 points, 2 runs, sports specifically in this case, but I did it for the super regional finale, which in reality was a 3-2 loss, but we're using our 2 runs here to flip that. And this was during, I think, the golden era of Houston Cougar baseball. You made the supers in 2000, 2002, 2003, but you never got an Omaha trip out of any of those appearances. And for Cougar baseball fans who've been around a long time, consensus is generally that U of H's best team of the modern era was that 2000 team. Team that won Conference USA a second year in a row, but unlike the 1999 team, went into the postseason white hot, won all but 1 game in their regional, advanced to the supers. I mean, hosted a San Jose State team that was making their first NCAA appearance in almost 30 years at the time, Cougs had 47 wins going to the Supers, which broke the program record for single season wins. I mean, there were other U of H teams that era that had more future Major League Baseball players, but this team had a bunch of really good college guys. Pitcher Shane Nance, who was one of Rainer Noble's many good two-way stars, along with Kyle Crowell and Duncan McAdoo, and the staff hitters Brandon Caraway, Tyson Schweitzer, Aaron Mellebeck, and Jared Bitter. Future MLB catcher Chris Snyder was actually a freshman part-time starter on this team as well. I mean, on paper, that was probably a tailor-made situation, it seemed like, to advance to what would have been your first appearance in the College World Series in over 30 years. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. You lost the opening game 5-3, stayed alive with a 5-2 win on Saturday, but ultimately saw your season end via a 3-2 loss in the Sunday finale. I think that maybe helps momentum in real time. I'm not even picking this so much for the how much does this change the future, but it just would be nice to have a modern day College World Series appearance on there. And I think that 2000 season was your best chance of making Omaha. It didn't end up happening. So I figured that was a good use of my 2 points here.
Yeah, it maybe it doesn't change the entire athletic department, but what does that baseball team look like? Like you said, it was kind of the heyday, but do you become that Rice? And is a trip to Omaha here where you get some guys who see what that's like? Rainer Noble gets to experience it, and there is something to be said about coaching in Omaha, just like players getting the experience of traveling and what does it take to get there and things like that. So I'm not saying it leads to a national championship, but can you become what Rice became when in the late 2000s?
Yeah, I mean, you made the Supers 2 years and 3 years later, so clearly there was some momentum there. I mean, yeah, does that change things?
Just would have been nice. All right,
Yep.
It's your next one. What do you got?
So it's my lone football picker. The most points I'm allocating to any game. I had a couple that I was debating here. I'm giving 7 points to the Cougars from the 2009 CUSA championship game against East Carolina. And late last week when we were talking through some logistical and concept stuff on this episode, as you and I often do prior to recording an episode, I tipped my hand to you that I was at the time struggling to find a Cougar football choice that really spoke to me. And right after the conversation, I found one. I'm going to that cold, rainy, early December afternoon in Greenville, North Carolina, where the Cougars took on ECU for the 2009 conference championship game. Ultimately lost 38-32 with the decisive final play being Van Eskridge intercepting Case Keenum in the end zone as U of H attempted a furious comeback for not the first time that season. I don't know how much this game would have changed in terms of seismic stuff, in the same way that maybe winning the 2011 CUSA championship game against Southern Miss would have had, because at that point, UH did have 2 regular season losses, that baffling loss to UTEP after the ranked wins against Oak State and Tech, and the slightly less baffling but still frustrating loss at UCF that season as well. I'm not sure even if Cincy had lost in their Big East championship game that same day, that U of H would have gotten what it needed to get to an NY6 bowl. I'm picking this one so Case Keenum could have had a conference title to his already illustrious resume from his time as Cougar quarterback. So maybe I picked this one for some sentimental reasons. I just wish Keenum and his team could have hosted a trophy on that afternoon. I originally was going to go for the 2016 Navy game, which also would have been a 7-point allocation. But the more I thought about that specific game and that specific season, I questioned how much changing that would have really changed things. I mean, yes, if you were around for that season 10 years ago, the vibes around the team definitely changed after the loss to Navy, but I don't know if that result changing would have changed some of the 2016 team's fundamental flaws. Greg Ward Jr. was incredible, but he was starting to show physical wear and tear. The offensive line problems you were kind of able to paper over in the Peach Bowl season the year prior were becoming really pronounced. And the defense, which still on the whole was good, had its moments, was more gettable in 2016 than it was in the prior season. Obviously, your head coach Tom Herman has eyes elsewhere. So I don't think changing that result would have had the same effects as the 2009 title game. So I went with that one, if nothing else, to give Case Keenum some conference hardware along with the many, many, many things he accomplished being the U of H quarterback for several years.
Yeah, I don't hate this pick. It's not one I had on my list. It would be nice to get Case a conference championship, which is one of the most overlooked things about Case Keenum, or like that we don't talk about, is he doesn't have a conference title. He didn't win a conference championship. My first thought was when we thought of this challenge was like, I wonder what it's going to take for me to get the the 2011, and then I was like, oh yeah, that was a 21 point loss. Like,
Don't have enough
that
points
ain't
for that one.
happening,
Nope.
buddy. Who don't even have enough points. But I think that one's fair. You're definitely, I can see how you and I approach this in a different way. You went for a big spin there. I don't have anything that is that big of a spin, but I like that pick a lot. I remember watching that game. I wasn't there in person, but I remember watching that game at a Buffalo Wild Wings. Heck, I don't know who I was watching it with, but yeah, I definitely I could see wanting that one to get flipped the other way for sure.
Just going back as a time traveler and screaming at Case Keenum, look at LJ Castile. LJ Castile's open. No, don't throw into coverage. All right, what's your next pick, buddy?
All right, next up. This is another bat and ball sport. I'm going 2008, and I am going to go with softball in their Super Game 1 versus Ooh La La. I'm allocating 3 there. It's a trip to Oklahoma City for them if they win this game. If they win game 1, they lost it by 2. They get 3 runs added to their score. They're going to Oklahoma City for the first time ever. I thought that team was a really, really good team. I remember loving going to those games. That's my freshman year, and just loving going to those games. We had so much fun at them. Going to the supers, going to the regional that we hosted. I thought that team was pretty good. Do I think that team necessarily wins a national championship or anything like that? No, but I do think that there's a difference between a regional and a super, like in what that does for your program. But then there's an even bigger jump going from super to playing on ESPN consistently at the Women's College World Series. And I think it would have been really nice. That program was, I want to say, 8 years old. Let me look at my inaugural year Cougar softball poster that I have. That was 2001. So that was their 8th season, kind of early, kind of got it done quick. I thought that team was really good. And yeah, you just ran into, and then, it happening against Ooh La La gives people like bad vibes because you kind of go, oh, what is Ooh La La? We shouldn't lose to Ooh La La. Ooh La La was really good in softball and still is really good in softball. So that one's kind of understandable there, but just kind of hurts to lose that one. And would have been fun to just kind of be a part of. I don't think it fundamentally changes what the softball program looks like or anything like that, but it is another plaque you get to add. It is something you can recruit to, and you can say that we had the talent to do that.
And that 08 team, I think undebatably best team in program history. If you talk about like full season accomplishments, there were 53-9 going into was ultimately that super regional loss to Ala in that series at home. Can I have something on this topic? Can I give you my pick? Very, very similar.
Yeah, let's go.
I went with the 2011 softball season. And again, younger fans might be surprised to hear at one time we had one of the best non-power, maybe the best, other than maybe Walla, non-power conference softball program in the country under your first ever head coach, Kyle House. And you had those 2 seasons, 2008 and 2011, where U of H got as close as the program has gotten to the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City. I like to go with the 2011 season and give the Cougars 2 runs in their super regional game 3 decider against Oklahoma State, which was actually a 6-5 loss that ultimately ended that team's season. As you mentioned, Bobby, the 2008 team a few years prior, definitely the more dominant one. I would say certainly the best in program history. But from what I remember, that 2011 team had real team of destiny vibes. I mean, unlike 08, they didn't play a single postseason game in the NCAAs at home. They won the Austin Regional by beating that same Ooh La La team that ended your season 3 seasons ago twice, a sandwich around a win over the host Longhorns as well. That team didn't have a singular ace pitching the same way that the 2008 team did with Angel Shamblin, but you had a really, really good 1-2 in the circle with Amanda Crabtree and Donna Bourgeois, along with a really balanced lineup with good hitters like Brooke Lathan, Melissa Gregson, Jen Klinkert, and Holly Anderson. It felt like a team of destiny. And while I'm sure if they had gotten to Oklahoma City, the season would have ended before the national championship game, it still would have been really cool to see that group play among the best of the best in college softball and have a Women's College World Series accomplishment among, a program that's been around less than 30 years. To have an Oklahoma City appearance when you've only been in existence for 30 years, regardless of what it changes now. I don't know how much it does change in 2026 with Cougar softball. It would still be really cool to have that. And I thought the easiest way to get that would be to give the Cougs 2 runs in their 2011 decider against Oak State that year.
So Sam, I actually have that one as well. So let's send them to. I feel like if you combine those two and you have 08 and you have 11, the momentum that team has is just unstoppable. And
Maybe
I
Mac
think
Rhodes
you
is
can.
less itchy, or whoever it was, Juracek is less itchy to let go of Hollis after they had kind of a down stretch after it. Maybe
Yeah. Or I do you
you
even
don't
have
hire
a
a bad
down?
human being to replace Kyle Hollis. Maybe
Yeah, that seems like a good thing there, but like you make it to Oklahoma City in 08 and 11. It's hard to even say that you might have a downturn, right? You have two World Series appearances that you can point to. Recruiting probably takes even a bigger step up if you have two within 4 years, and who knows what this program achieves from there. So I actually have that one on my list as well.
going softball heavy. I love it. All right, you want to go next? Or you want me to get my next one?
Go ahead. You can go next, buddy.
I'm going a bit deeper cut with my next one, but longtime listeners of the pod won't be surprised. I'm giving 1 point to Cougar soccer for its regular season 1-1 tie with South Florida from the fall 2021 season. I mean,
Great
today,
answer.
that fall 21 team is probably the best soccer team U of H has fielded. You came only 1 point short of outright winning the American Athletic Conference regular season title. And the decisive result there was this tie at USF, who ended up winning the conference regular season title that year. Especially maddening how it happened. Still remember this one. Wish I didn't remember it as well as I did. U of H scored a 27th minute goal to lead 1-0, led until literally the last 47 seconds of the match. We'll remind you, college soccer doesn't do added time the same way that professional soccer does. Ref blew a whistle for absolutely incidental contact in the box on veteran Cougar midfielder Mia Brasha, gave USF a penalty kick, and UH essentially had no time to respond to it. Game ends in a 1-1 tie. I mentioned it, there was only 1 point difference in the standings between where UH and USF finished. You give UH 3 points instead of 1. You give USF 0 instead of 1. Cougs win the American Athletic Conference title that season. I don't think U of H, with the regular season conference wins they had over SMU, UCF, and Memphis, and this hypothetical win over USF, would have been left out of the NCAA tournament. You get the RPI boost from winning that, which I think was one of the biggest reasons why the Cougs got left out of the postseason that year. So I definitely thought it was worth using 1 point of my 20-point budget to change this specific result. To be clear, I still think that U of H team, even with its resume exactly as it was, deserved to be in the NCAAs, but I'm confident if you change this specific result, that would have allowed, at the time, head coach Diego Bocanegra and the team to achieve history, which everyone involved there so richly deserved.
I didn't even consider this game, and I got to give it to you. That is a great answer. One I didn't think of. Great use of points there
Maybe
too
Diego
by
Bocanegra
getting
doesn't
the draw.
retire afterwards.
Yeah, I love that answer. One I certainly overlooked, and I really like that answer. So a good choice there for all the reasons that you said. You make the tournament. You do history, and we talked a lot about that with women's golf this year, right? Like something about history makers, even if they aren't the number one team in the country or anything like that, but just doing something no one's ever done. And what does the momentum of this program look like?
Yeah,
So great answer
if
there, Sam.
Bocanegra calls it a college career as coach after that, maybe you make a better hire than the one you made afterwards. Like all that stuff is possible as well.
Yeah, because you get to go. Hey, we have a team that's made the NCAA tournament, and you have a little bit better program to build it on. No, love that answer. Love that answer. Great
All
answer.
right, what's your
So
next one?
next up, I am going to go with the 1979 Cotton Bowl versus Notre Dame. The Cougs are going to get 2 extra points here. That is just a game that a lot of our alumni talk about. And again, it's before our time, but I think if you go and you win that game versus Notre Dame, and was that Montana who threw the pass? Joe Montana.
It
He
was,
doesn't
yep.
have that. He doesn't have that legendary moment. And I think my cup that I have of the U of H Cotton Bowl game that sits on my shelf behind me back here probably doesn't piss people off as much as it does, but just would be cool to have that victory over Notre Dame to just, do I think it changes the way we think about the history of this program or anything like that? Not necessarily. Maybe a Cotton Bowl win, a national championship, Heisman in 89, maybe that helps a little bit, but I don't think they're looking 16 years in the past of what you did. But just a game I had 2 extra points left over. I kind of went through postseason history, and that's one that really stood out to me as something that gets spoken about a lot with Cougar lore. And I think you got a chance to win that game. It was really cold out, is something that everybody talks about. Fingers were sticking to the balls and all that kind of stuff. So would just be a better story to hear from our alumni who are older than even us. So that's why I chose that one for no other reason than it would have just been cool to win.
Yeah, I'm glad you got that we got a Yeoman era football game in here. Was trying to make it work with my math, and I couldn't with the games I had. But that's a really good one. That is definitely. I don't know if you could do, like you said, like I don't know if you could do as much of, hey, this win changes X in the future, but it would have been a really good win to get as opposed to one of several heartbreaking moments for those of us who follow this wonderful university.
Yes, sir. So how many you got left? Because I got 2 left, but you had the 7.
I got
and the
one.
1.
I got one from all the overlaps we've had and stuff. Why don't you give your next one and then we'll trade off our last ones here.
All right. My next one is for no other reason than I would have just liked to have seen what it would have meant for this team and its final rankings is 2015 football versus UConn. You lose that game.
I thought about this one actually. I did.
I give them 3 points there. I don't know if it changes where you go bowl wise or where you do any of that. Maybe it does. But I think this U of H team, if you give them this win and then they still go on to the Peach Bowl and they still beat Florida State, because that's kind of where the G5 was situated, was the Peach Bowl. I don't know if you get. I don't think I think that was a playoff year. I don't think you're jumping into the top 4 or anything like that. I don't think that happens necessarily, but I do think this U of H program gets a lot more respect as the team that broke into the playoff system in the New Year's Eve 6 bowls. You had Boise broke into the BCS and they were kind of looked at this as the darlings of the G6. But then when the playoff era started, you had the Peach Bowl got added, and you had the New Year's Eve 6 bowls, and that felt different than the BCS because of the playoff, right? And so you had a new era, and I think that U of H team gets a lot of respect. But in the playoff era, the team you think of that broke through is that UCF team that went undefeated, is that Cincy team that made the playoff. I think if U of H doesn't lose this game to UConn, they're the team that you think of when you think of G5 programs and ones that broke into the national spotlight. I think you had a real chance after the Sugar Bowl when you beat Oklahoma. Unfortunately, you had Herman with eyes wandering somewhere else that kind of gave up on that season. I think if you really start to do well that 2016 season, you are thought of that way. But I think it starts with going undefeated in that 2015 regular season and not inexplicably losing to that UConn team.
As someone who made the trip up to Hartford for that one, I certainly would have loved for that one to have gone differently in real time. I will say, to that specific season, that point in it, and this is actually why I considered it and didn't use it here. I do think you came out just absolutely spitting nails the next game against Navy because it was off a loss, but you looked like a more focused team against, I think, probably the best Naval Academy team of our lifetimes, a good ass team. That was Keenan Reynolds' final year there as well, because you were coming off that painful loss to UConn. I'm not saying, if you don't find a way to beat UConn, you don't find a way to beat Navy. I do think it helped in the regular season finale, which U of H winning that guaranteed spot in the AAC title game, which winning that got you the Peach Bowl. I do wonder if you somehow found a way to squeak out that win the way you found a way to squeak out other wins that season. I don't know. Do you come out as focused? Do you come out as chastened from the loss and win that absolute critical game the next week against Navy? That's why I didn't pick it. But all the stuff you said is very valid, and it would have been the first and only undefeated U of H football season in our lifetime. So yeah, that would have been very significant if you win that one and find a way to still win all the games subsequent to that, to have that undefeated team versus still a very respected team that went 13-1, but I don't know, man, a 14-0 U of H team. Like you wonder what changes if you found a way to go through that season unblemished.
Exactly. All right. What's your final one?
I made my last pick a bit of a sentimental one. I think I'm going to go with, because we had some questions about how many points we allocate for this. still one that I believe would have had a massive impact on the season I used it for. I'm giving 2 points to Cougar Tennis from their 4-3 road loss to Kansas this past season. The sentimentality is obviously because of the soft spot I have for the 2026 Cougar Tennis team, but if you want to point to any one specific result from this past season that put the Cougs just on the wrong side of the NCAA tournament bubble, it was really that you lacked a marquee road win on the season. You had good home wins over BYU and Utah, notably didn't take any bad losses at any point during that season, but your resume probably could have used a good road win like one over Kansas absolutely would have been. A ranked team who ended up themselves going to the NCAA postseason. You might have ended up taking Kansas' spot in the postseason had you won that one, because Kansas finished one game ahead of you in the conference standings as well. I considered that with that pick. I remember following that one on a Friday night, and when U of H won the opening doubles point, I started to get really confident. I even texted you, I believe, because that's usually a good indicator in college tennis who ends up winning the match, who wins the first point in doubles. Unfortunately, in reality, the Cougars were only able to win 2 of the 6 singles matches. KU ended up getting themselves a valuable 4-3 home win that probably put them in good position to be on the right side of the NCAA tournament bubble. Not only would the win have gotten U of H's RPI, I think, where it needed to be for an at-large, it would have set up a rematch at the Big 12 championship later that season with an Arizona team who the Cougs also lost an extremely close match to on the road during the season. I mean, no guarantee the Cougars win the rematch. Arizona finished the regular season absurdly hot, but I think even with a loss there in the conference postseason, I don't think that would have had a negative effect on your postseason chances. So that's my last pick. A bit of a sentimental one, I will admit, but I really would have loved to see that 2026 group break U of H's decade-plus NCAA tournament drought, give us a chance to actually follow the NCAA tennis postseason with the U of H team in it for the first time in our pod's history. I don't know if it changes Kat leaving for Oklahoma State because she was never going to turn down a chance to be a head coach at her alma mater and one of the better resource programs in all of college tennis, but it would have been another thing to add to the long list of things that team accomplished and gotten to see something happen that we've never gotten to see happen in the decade plus that we've been doing this podcast. So my last 2 points go to Cougar Tennis for their loss to Kansas, and it's the sum total of my 20 points of changing U of H history, Bobby.
All right, my final pick, Sam. I told you I had one that would make you go WTF, and I clearly haven't had it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I have it here for you. I'm taking it back to 2001 football, and I am allocating 2 points to beat Cincinnati. I found the game with the smallest spread. You lost by 1 to Cincinnati. I've given football 2 just so you don't have a winless season that year. For no other reason than I just didn't want the winless season. You get 2 points.
That's good.
There.
No, I actually like that a lot.
It changes nothing about the history of U of H football. It does nothing in the grand scheme of things. But man, it sure would be nice to not have a winless season there. I think if you get that, maybe, I'm not saying that the vibes around the program are a lot better, but vibes are better when you win at least one game. You get to have that moment of winning a game at least once in a season. Going winless in a season, I'm sure, is very tough. Sam, thankfully, you and I, since we've really become fans, haven't really had to experience it. But, one of the things you told me is growing up in Houston, you guys would frequently go to Rice games over U of H games. They were closer to you. They were kind of easier, and the team was
they were a better team.
Like it was more fun to watch, and like maybe if you don't go winless, maybe you go to those games, and not saying that in a roundabout way you didn't become a U of H fan in the first place, but maybe the vibes around the city. I didn't live there at the time, but just based on what I've heard, nobody cared about U of H, and maybe if you win one game, it's on the sports section on Saturday night on the news. They go, hey, check this out. The winless Houston Cougars are no longer winless, and it gets one more person. I often talk about the dead era of U of H athletics and how we don't have a lost generation of Cougar fans, how from basically 2 years before the SWC split up until probably 2005 when football really started to kind of get its mojo back a little bit. I don't quite say 2006 because there was a little bit of a build to it in 05. You could see the Bryles coming in and making things a little bit better there. But you had that lost generation where there was no reason to go to U of H besides the education, which that should be why you want to go. But there was nothing that tied you to the university. Yeah, we talked about baseball was making a super, but they weren't going to Omaha, right? But maybe if that team wins a game, you don't have as bad of a loss the next year in terms of Cougar fandom. Maybe you win a couple of more games next year because there's something to build on. Whenever you go winless, it feels like you're hitting Control-Alt-Delete, you're restarting everything, and you're starting from scratch. And you saw the effects of 6 years earlier, 6, 7 years earlier, really take its toll on that. And I do think one of the positives to kind of come out of that season is a few years later, you did see the university say, we have to step up our commitment, but maybe you don't fall as deep as you do if you have one win in 2001. Maybe that's rock bottom still, but it's not as far down and you don't have to dig as big of a hole on your way up, but really the main thing is the vibes. You don't want the winless season. Just get one win on the board there.
Yeah, purely for just not having a winless season, I think that's actually a really good pick. I don't know if it changes anything in terms of Art Browse coming in 2003 and being better than his predecessor Dana Dimmel, who oversaw the actual winless season, because notoriously Dana Dimmel and Dave Maggard, who was hired after Dimmel got there, just notoriously did not get along. And I think anything other than a very good 2002 season, he was making a change there. But just not having a winless season on the books, I think would be good. I think a good use of your 2 points there.
All right. So before we wrap up, read me your list of yours again, and I'll read you mine. And we're not making this a contest or something, but I do just want to hear what yours were one more time.
All right. So just the order it's in my notes, not the order we talked about. 3 points to men's basketball against Florida in the 2025 national championship game. 1 point, 1 goal to Cougar soccer for their 1-1 tie against USF. I almost call them UCF like 3 different times. USF.
Perfect.
In 2021.
They all look alike in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. 7 points to football from the 2009 Conference USA championship game there. 3 points to men's basketball in the 1983 national title game against NC State. 2 points, 2 runs to softball against Oklahoma State in the 2011 Super Regional finale. 2 runs, 2 points to Cougar baseball with their Super Regional finale loss to San Jose State. And 2 points to Cougar tennis for their 4-3 loss to Kansas this past season. That's my full list of 20.
All right, here's mine. I did 1983 men's basketball. That was 3 points. 2025 men's basketball. There's another 3. Then in my list here, in the order I had them written down, not that we shared them, is I have 2000s baseball super versus San Jose State. 2008 softball super versus Ooh La La. Then I have the 2001 football versus Cincy. I have 2015 football versus UConn. 2011 softball versus Oklahoma State in a super, and then I have the 1979 Cotton Bowl versus Notre Dame, and I get 2 points there. So I think both lists are really good. You had a couple that I didn't think of. That 2009 championship game one is one I might be kicking myself. Maybe I could have given up a couple, but I really like that choice. I think I had some good ones that you didn't have.
I like that we differed. I didn't want us to have exactly the same list. Like, we knew there'd be some obvious overlaps there, but I wanted us to have different lists as best we could.
Yeah, man. Just a fun thing to just, if you're a newer Cougar fan, and despite us being Cougar fans for almost 20 years, 2007 was my first year as a U of H fan. Even though I did watch that 2006 Conference USA championship game and the Liberty Bowl that followed, because I was pretty sure I was headed to U of H at that point. But yeah, just if you're a newer Cougar fan, I would, like I said, consider us kind of newer fans because a lot happened before we got to U of H. Just go back and look through the archives on uhcougars.com. It's kind of fun. Just go to the media guides and just go back and just look at some of the history that the schools have. That the school has. You see some good moments. You see some really upsetting moments. If you want to feel good about your sports program, just go read the golf one. Like, that'll make you feel really good. The men's golf one, that's a fun one. men's basketball can be fun. It can be depressing at times as well, but football is usually a solid one to just go read. But even women's basketball, like I tried to find some women's basketball ones, and you realize I really want to see this program do good. They've had a couple of good seasons, but when they reach the postseason, there's usually some games where they get, I think the furthest I saw was that they've made it to the second round of the NCAA tournament, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but it makes you want to cheer for them even harder and what Coach Mitchell's building and whatnot.
I was gonna say that team, you definitely like Shandy Jones, very, very good player. Like you had some ups there. It was sustaining it though. It was always a challenge to that program. Yeah. What I could say is it's never dull being a U of H fan.
Yeah.
And you
sometimes see that doing that.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. But it's never dull. And what you'll see looking in the past, what I think is really cool and makes me really proud to be an alum of this university and a fan of its athletic programs is quite often this program has punched above its weight. This athletic department has punched above its weight. That its teams have generally been innovative. Like that you've had to win with less. And I think that's always something that's made me really proud to be an alum of this university and fan of all of its teams.
Yeah, man. I think one of us many, many years ago was me, you, friend of the pod, Bill, Dustin. We had another friend named Trent. We all kind of hung out together. And one of the things that we used to say is it's not easy being a Cougar, which we heard from older alumni. But then, if you wanted it easy, you should be wearing burnt orange. Like you said, it's never boring. You will most certainly get your heart broken, but man, it's fun to watch these teams consistently, like you said, punch above their weight class. And it's what gives me hope for the future that now on a financial ground, we're up with Baylor, we're up with Texas Tech, we're up with Oklahoma State, these schools that have kind of, I don't want to say punch down on us like Baylor has. Tech never really has. I mean, they kind of have, right? Especially more modern. Oklahoma State's always like, these are teams that
I'll give Tech, man. We said a lot of bad stuff about Tech, and I will say in the future a lot of bad stuff about Tech and its dumbass fans. They at least scheduled us before we got to the Big 12. They at least acknowledged our existence, which I'll begrudgingly give them that.
Yep. And so we're on a financial level that they are with Baylor, right? Baylor has always kind of thought they were better than us, and they've always had more money than us. But we're in the same conference. We're in the same recruiting ground. We're on the same level. Baylor may still have more money than us overall, but in terms of what we're getting from the conference, it's now on the same level. And we've been punching at that Baylor weight class for a long time. We've been as good, if not better than them in a lot of sports. And I'm just using Baylor as an example here. We've been as good, if not better, in a lot of sports than Baylor has. And you know what? Now we have that money, and I'm excited for the future of where this program heads. Now that we have the financial standing to, we no longer have to do more with less. We're just at a point where we can just do more. And that's one thing we've learned as a university is how do we optimize the dollars and how do we get the best performance with our 3-star quarterback named Case Keenum from Stephenville, Texas? Like, how do you get the most out of him and things like that?
Abilene, put some respect on Abilene, buddy.
Abilene, my bad. That's on me. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. This made me really love remembering why I'm a University of Houston fan, besides hanging out with you guys, besides it's what I've done for the last 20 years. It reminds me of why this university is so great and why it is so great to be a Houston Cougar. So with that being said, Sam, I think that's it for this week's episode. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. I would love to hear where you would allocate your 20 points. Find us on social media. You can find us there on Twitter at SH Podcast. You can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. Send us your 20 on via email. You can find us at shpodcast@gmail.com. And if you really want us to hear your 20, we'll take it on Patreon. For $5 a month, you can get some great premium content, especially during football season and basketball season. We're trying to do more and more as time allows us to, and our lives get kind of figured out. We're going to do more and more premium content. And so we're really looking forward to that. And if you want to throw a couple of bucks our way, you can always go to patreon.com/SH podcast. Sam, did I cover it all? I think I did.
You sure did, buddy.
All right, buddy. What do we always say, especially after a fun episode like this?
Go Cougs.
All right.
Go Cougs! Let's go!